Alright, welcome back to Full House 7th edition, where we are playing Vanheim. It is turn 13, and we're going for a throne. I think this is the earliest that I've gone for a throne, and we do not bump with Pangea, which was my primary concern. So let's take a look at this and watch the throne defenders make a fool of me. I think we're going to be okay. Oh, that's a lot of dead. I suppose there already are a lot of dead here in this province. I know that, dead bodies and dominions, they carry over turn to turn. I don't know if you can use the existing dead bodies in the province in battle for the spell Raise Dead. I'm assuming so, based on the amount of dead that are popping up here. So this is more undead generation than I was hoping for, but yeah, we are significantly killier than a single Earth Serpent. And we also, we have our Prophet and we have another Priest here. A lot of fellows on attack rear, on the flanks, so we are able to get back. We are able to cut our way through the skeletons, and I think this is going to work out more or less without loss for us. We'll probably lose 2 Vanhears or something, although the Bless is active now, so that should not happen. Or rather, the full Bless is active now, so let's take a look. We lose a Spearman. So this is much more like the results that we're hoping to get from here on out. Of course, we're up against a relatively weak throne that has been significantly reduced in terms of its defenders. So not the greatest test, but hey, it's not when things work out. You should definitely try to take advantage of them. Speaking of things working out, the yellow mold, of course, it'll be back. It's always back. And we do finish our Palisade, which is late, but it's nice that it's up now. And we finish research only in Evocation 1. Evocation 2 is really what we're looking for, so not as important. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We're going to chop. Well, actually, I guess technically we're going to poke. So we're not going to waste any time. We're not going to reach out to Agartha. We're not going to say anything. We're just going to attack. I feel like it is in the Vanheim way. Also a little overextended on games. So, if I get knocked out of this early, not the end of the world. We can see that, they're building some scouts, maybe to get an idea if they should attack, but we're not going to bother with that. They could be planning on sending those scouts elsewhere, but we've kind of seen what we needed to see, I hope, fingers crossed. So I would say the time of the van here is, right now. In fact, arguably, probably the last 12 turns, also a time where the Vanhears should be ascendant. But of course, our Pretender was sleeping during that time, so we got to kind of make up for lost ground. But we're not actually attacking with any of our Vanhears off the bat, so we're just going to send in our regular elves because not expecting a lot of resistance in these provinces. And then we're going to send the mercenaries over here, and that is because we're going to go ahead and just claim this throne immediately. I do really want Dominion push because our Dominion is looking a little on the sad side. The throne, I don't know, I think this is probably one of the worst thrones. I don't know. I have a lot less familiarity with the level 1 thrones, but Undying +3 is kind of eh. And then we get no gems from it, no mages. It spreads our dominion the minimum amount, I think, from thrones. I don't know. Maybe there's some thrones out there that don't spread dominion. But this is a pretty unimpressive throne, so not that we had to fight that hard to get it. There's definitely an argument to be made for just not bothering to claim it, especially because these are mountain passes, and our dominion is cold dominion, and we have no mountain survival whatsoever. So we are headed towards summer, so I'm hoping, we can see heat on the other side. Agartha probably went full heat because they do not like the cold, and our dominion is not that strong here yet, but of course the throne will make it a lot stronger, and once these close, we will not actually be able to reinforce over here, because this river has not yet frozen. So that could be a bit of a problem. That said, we can sneak through Pangea's territory with some of our stuff, but some of the siege strength that I'm planning on bringing up is not stealthy. That said, we are really hoping to get this province, and we are moving in that direction, so we're taking our other van here, as well as some random deer tribe, and hopefully this should be enough now that our Bless is online. We'll see. It's still a little scary. Like I said, we don't love just a ton of numbers of anything, and this is looking like a lot of numbers. But Heavy Cav is a lot less scary for elves than for a lot of other factions, so, fingers crossed that it'll work out. We're also going to bounce our commander off of it so we can see exactly what we're up against. So yeah, planning on taking this. We are also doing some preaching here. Ouch. And that's just because we're broke. So we're, building the fortress, and we'll hopefully build a lab here next turn, and then we can start to recruit Vanhearses from this fort. Speaking of being broke, we are recruiting another dwarf. The dwarves are good. I like to recruit the dwarves early. We did get a fire random. That's one of the randoms we're looking for. We're also really looking for a death random. Really hoping not to see any more of these air randoms. The earth randoms are really nice, but yeah, really hoping for that death random at this point. It's not required because we can also random death with our Vanadrots, but the Vanadrots are just so expensive that I find, at least with this build early on, I just can't afford to build them. Can't really even afford to build Van Jarls for that matter. So we'll see. Maybe that's just how Vanheim plays. Maybe it's a weakness of this build. Certainly if I went full scales, we'd have more money, but even with full scales, elves are just expensive. So yeah, otherwise, a little bit of site searching, maybe a little on the early side. We don't have a ton of uses for gems, but we are planning on using some earth gems. We're going to go up to Conjuration 2, which is not going to net us any elementals, but it'll at least leave us close by if we decide that we need lesser air elementals. I'm hoping to win this first war just on the strength of the Vanhears and maybe a little bit of thugging. But Conjuration 2 will net us ogres, summon ogres, and a lot of people really look down on ogres, and I understand why. They're not great, and it's a lot of earth gems, but they do provide a lot of siege strength, and I think for Vanheim early on, it's if you're willing to make the trade, it's a reasonable way to get some siege strength relatively fast, and it doesn't put any more pressure on your gold. And again, at least with this build, we have a lot of gold pressure. So we will want some earth gems, so fingers crossed that we're going to be finding, right, it's in the mountains, we've got an earth 3, come on, earth gems. So yeah, that covers it in terms of what we're doing, but our scout network is starting to increase, so it definitely looks like, we see, this is Lanka, right, so Pangea is inside Lanka's cap circle, so there's no way that these two aren't fighting, and it looks like, at least at the moment, Pangea has the upper hand, so, we're going to hopefully catch, some counter raiding, and hopefully get some more scouts in here, because, yeah, if Pangea is, really scary and has a really scary bless, and they finish this war really quickly, again, Vanheim isn't the top of anybody's list in terms of targets, but it's a consideration, right? We do have a throne right here on our border. So anyway, definitely hoping to get a little bit more information about what's going on over here in Pangea's bless, but it is looking like Pangea, went fairly heavy on the bless, because it's not like Lanka. Lanka often goes fairly heavy on the bless as well. So we could be up against some fairly scary white centaur, we will see. In terms of the Calum Archocephaly war, it actually looks like that, while Archocephaly has lost a ton of ground, they may decapitate Calum, because this is Calum and the fort is cracked. And those Wind Riders, they killed a bunch of our Vanhears. Now, granted, we didn't have our full bless, but still, Wind Riders are scary, and if he's got a whole stack of them here, maybe with a little bit of early mage support, or maybe even not without any mage support, I'm not sure Calum is going to be able to stop them. And if Calum, loses their capital, they do at least have one palisade up, and, they are relatively large, so it's not impossible that they have a second palisade up, but probably not. And, they're not going to be able to recruit anything that's cap limited, and they're going to be able to do a lot less recruitment out of this palisade. So, while it looks kind of dire for Archocephaly right now, they may actually come out on top in this war. It'll just take them a second, which would be great for us, because this is probably, this direction is where we're going to look next. But of course, it's not like I would ever fail in an early war against Agartha. Speaking of possible failures against Agartha, we may want to spend some of our gold on crappy human units, because probably the main way that we would lose to Agartha is their Mind Blasters, which in some ways are better against elves and in some ways are worse. So we have better than average magic resistance, 14 versus humans with 10 usually. But 14 is not unassailable. So, we can absolutely get stunned by it. And then, of course, the other problem is the other way that you generally deal with Mind Blasters is just bring a lot of mines. But numbers, not really the thing for the elves. So, again, we're going to need some chaff. We do at least have this fort up. And so, yeah, we might just recruit a bunch of archers, really just, for their mines. And if they drop some arrows, on some squishy Agarthans, that's cool too. Of course, it is going to be sad because, yeah, archers just don't combine super well with elves because they'll pop our own glamour. So we'll see. I don't know if we're really going to be able to recruit that many heavy infantry, so we may even just recruit militia. Which is not great. At that point, probably we should just recruit the Surf Warriors. Hard to say. I'll have to think about that. Yeah, and you can see we're getting absolutely no value out of this palisade because we're super broke. So anyway, some thoughts on the upcoming war and, kind of the situation, such as the little that we know about it. And I think that more or less covers turn 13. All right, welcome back to Full House 7th edition, where we are playing Vanheim. It is turn 14, and we are about to launch a war against Agartha. We finished some research, which is nice. Now that our pretender is awake, he's not an amazing researcher, but since he has a lot of magic paths, he researches much better than regular mages. So we get Evocation 2, which is mostly for Lightning Bolt in an emergency situation, because our Van Herses will have to spend an air gem like pretty much per cast to cast Lightning Bolt, but in an emergency, I think absolutely worth it. And of course, once we get Storm, then they can summon Storm Power and do all the normal stuff. Now we're going up Conjuration for the Ogres, and then nice to see our God and Prophet up there claiming a throne, even though Throne of Bones, we talked about, not the greatest. Hey, and we found a magic site, Quicksand. This is Earth Gems, excellent. That's what we're going to need for those Ogres, among other things. And then looks like TNN also Prophet number 2. Ouch, so it looks like things didn't go so great for Jam. Have no idea what happened there. And then, we have our first battle against Agartha. Probably just going to be Province Defense. Yeah, and these are our mercenaries. Kind of a reduced mercenary group. And Agartha went with 6. This looks like at least 6 PD. So mercenaries are like kind of decent, actually. They usually come with a good amount of experience. So like normally I'd say like it's probably not enough spearmen, but because of their better stats, they actually do pretty well generally against Province Defense, although these hoplites definitely have a lot more armor. So we'll see. It's a little dicey, and this is probably going to be it, but we're not going to renew this mercenaries contract, so it's kind of okay if they bounced, and it does look like this works out for us. So that is very nice. We just lose a couple guys, and it looks like Agartha was doing some recruitment here as well. So definitely nice to block that, because obviously, we need them to die now. So it's not personal. I actually feel a little bad. This is our ping against independence. A lot of stuff here, definitely. Most of it's garbage, but still, don't love all this stuff. And these guys throw javelins. We don't love ranged fire. That's a lot of javelins to be eating, but that's what our deer tribe are for. But anyway, I think this player got rushed in like another Full House game, so feel a little bad, but it's just, hey, you lose your Wake Expander. We got to chop. It cannot stop. So, and then we witness, this looks like, okay, Calum attacking. Yeah, this is going to be a pivotal battle, I suspect. Certainly, Calum has brought everything to the table, or more or less everything, and it looks like Arcocephaly has as well. Not a whole lot of nuance to this plan either. This looks like just, a bunch of Wind Riders. It does look like they're being led by the Prophet, which is very important because Arcocephaly can definitely struggle to bless up all these Wind Riders, but with the Divine Blessing, he's going to get them all blessed. Whereas on Calum's side, there's actually a decent amount going on. He somehow has some villains, just random bait squads, which I do like. That's going to spread out the flyers a little bit. And then he's got, of course, plenty of his own flyers. The Spirehorn Warriors are not going to stack up so well, but, they do at least have magic weapons. I don't think it's going to matter too much. They have Pierce, 13 damages. They're going to struggle, I think, but they'll at least be able to get chip damage. And then Calum has bought, I think, at least 2 different mercenary groups who aren't going to do great against the Wind Riders, but again, should at least be able to do chip damage. And then he's brought out quite a few mages as well. We'll see what kind of research he has. Normally, those are some scary paths, but this early on, an Eagle King, also really scary, but maybe no gems, right? So maybe also went with some early evocation. He does not have to spend gems to cast Lightning Bolt. This Eagle King will cast Lightning Bolt all day long. And Lightning Bolt will definitely do work against those Wind Riders. I'm pretty sure they have no resists whatsoever. A little bit of fire magic, probably not going to be too relevant this early. He also brought out Ice Clads. I thought they were sacred, but they are not. But they do have ice protection, and it's looking pretty cold. 19 protection. So again, they're going to struggle to deal damage, but they should at least hold up better. So I'll go ahead and stop talking. And let's take a look and see how this goes. Let's just remind ourselves of this bless. Larger, super popular on these Wind Riders, which I feel like, probably worth it. Hard to say. Attack skill 4, magic weapons, blood surge. These guys are pretty scary. But again, no resists, which could be really relevant if we have some lightning casting. But this is a lot of Wind Riders, so I honestly don't know which way this is gonna go. I'm gonna say money on the Wind Riders, but we'll see. So it looks like both sides are flying. Ooh, I didn't consider that. Yeah, so I think he's going to lose his commander. He may have already lost his commander. So, like, that's kind of unfortunate. Yep, I think I saw a route there for Archocephaly. So there you go. Don't listen to Janus. Yeah, there they go routing off. Oh, what a sad display. So like, yeah, you really got to be careful if you just have like the one commander that they're synced up in terms of like when they jump. So it's like if you're gonna send all your units to the rear, then you need to make sure that your commander's also on attack rear, and he does it at the same round that your units do. I guess less important if you're not up against a bunch of flyers, although even against ground pounders, like if there's some attack rears, some guys eventually will get back there. If you just have the one commander with a couple bodyguards, that can get really ugly really fast. And I don't think that Archocephaly had a lot of retreat routes, if any. So, like, yeah, this is catastrophic, even if they did have retreat routes, because they don't have any leadership to collect anybody that retreated. And, like, this is probably most of what they have. So, Calum getting, I think, kind of lucky there, to be honest. I mean, Calum absolutely did a much better job, right? This is really more like a real army. You can see, like, look at all the commanders on Calum's side. There was no way they were going to get sniped like that. So I don't want to take anything away from what Calum did. Like, this looks like an absolutely competent defense. But had they not managed to snipe the leadership, I think this could have gone very differently. That said, like, the number is like, maybe they had more than I was realizing. That's definitely a lot of units to cut through. Wind Riders can suffer a bit from fatigue issues, so yeah, maybe I was just straight up wrong. I do like Wind Riders, so perhaps a bit biased. And this is the raid that I'm expecting to work out without much difficulty, so it's probably where we'll fail. No, I think we'll be fine. Yeah, so we have our guy on advance and cast spells. Oh, he's on attack. So speaking of making mistakes with leadership, yeah, he is on advance and cast spells, but he decided to go into melee. So we're probably going to have to change that. I was a little bit worried about the same kind of issue, right, where it's like, well, if we just leave him in the back, he's going to get sniped. But having him lead the charge is a little on the scary side, but luckily we're the elves. And if any faction, can have their commanders lead the charge, it's definitely Vanheim. So that does work out for us, but is a little on the scary side. We do lose one of our elves, which, that always hurts. We really, attrition is a little worse than normal, or a little worse than what I'm used to. And then we have some unexpected events. I'm sure these are fine. Hey, 6 death gems. Very nice. Okay, this is because of the Throne of Bones. So there you go. I've been dissing this throne, but here it is giving us some death gems. So, perhaps it's not so bad after all. And then we lynched a wizard to get his gems. Excellent. And then we catch a warlock, and we collect some blood slaves. So, yeah, that was actually all good events. Who knew? And then, of course, this is our mercenary group, which we did not renew their contract, and they don't have very many units left, so they retire. And I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Our war with Gartha continues, although we're not making any attacks this turn. We're going to take our Elven raiding group and just sneak them forward. We still don't know for sure that this is a Gartha, although I can't imagine, right? It's the only cave. I mean, I guess theoretically this could be a Gartha. So yeah, like I said, we didn't really do any scouting before launching this war, so this is going to be, a little bit of scouting in force. In case there's quite a few mages out here, I'm assuming they're all doing site searching. Yeah, I was a little weirded out because it says there's quite a few of them, but they can random into several different paths. So I'm guessing that, there's a couple different flavors of Earthreader there that are all doing site searching. So it's unlikely that they're going to attack us, but you never know. So just in case, we're going to move our van here, not sneak them. We're going to move them in. So, if there's a counterattack that comes in, we should be able to handle that. After that, we'll probably rotate where we sneak our Vanheir group and attack with our regular elves, but it does depend kind of on what we see. Also of note, the Agarthan player has subbed, and the sub that took over is actually Abyssia from the Full House 6E game, 6th edition, where I was playing Ermor. So this player and I, know each other, but we have not fought yet, so that should be interesting. They're also not thrilled because, they felt that Vanheim didn't really have a sufficient border. This is kind of an odd war to be launching, and, they're 100% correct. I've already talked about how our border situation isn't great. But the sub, I don't know, like, what sort of conditions under which they took over. Like, did they get to talk to the previous player, or did the previous player, have to step away without being able to give any information? So the sub may not yet be aware that their pretender is dead. They may be thinking that, this is an imprisoned build or something like that, although we're maybe dormant, right? And it's late to wake up. That said, again, I am very worried about the Mind Blasters. In some ways, I feel like Agartha is not an ideal target for us. Our fortification here will finish next turn, so we will be able to recruit. Probably we're looking at militia. We'll see. Maybe the archers, but probably militia. And at that point, maybe just the serfs? Hard to say. The serfs do at least have a shield, and the morale is more or less, it is exactly the same. So we'll see, but like I said, we just need mines, but getting them over there could be a bit difficult. So definitely planning on continuing to press this war, but we may not go to completion, right? We may not actually try to cap the capital. If we can convince Agartha that, really, part of the problem is like these provinces aren't really worth a lot. This lava lake is really nice. Definitely want to hold on to this. And having a buffer for our throne would be pretty nice, but I suspect that Agartha isn't that large. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they extend really far in the other direction or north and south. But if they're relatively small, then they're not going to be willing, to give anything up. And of course, we're pretty small too, so it's not like we really have room to give anything up. And so, why would we even give anything up? And that is because, this war between Lanka and Pangaea is maybe not quite as one-sided as I thought. I do think Lanka's in a lot of trouble because we can see that Kailasa down here has also pushed into their cap circle. But Pangaea is actually only here, right? This is Pangaea's capital. So, we know, this is Kalem. Now, maybe Pangaea extends really far to the south, but probably not, since we see a Tianchi flag here and Abyssia. Just through the game chat, we know that Abyssia took out, I believe, Mictlan, or is in the process of taking out Mictlan. Which isn't particularly relevant for us yet, but it sounds like Abyssia has gone for a strong early build, which is pretty standard. But if we could remove Pangaea, right, while this war is ongoing, now unfortunately, again, everything's really cramped. We're definitely going to have to take somebody out completely, no question. But in a lot of ways, this territory is maybe looking a little more tantalizing. And, possibly we could, it's unlikely we'd be able to pick up Lanka and Pangaea, but maybe, right? It depends on, how strong Kailasa is and, what they're up to. But anyway, there's also a throne down here. So there's a good amount of territory that's kind of in flux down here that have a better border. Our borders are not fantastic, actually. It's a good thing we picked up this throne because this is kind of our only way, through these mountain passes. This province actually was kind of critical. And Kalem is looking pretty strong at this point. At least they're relatively large. And this is a pretty large army for this point in the game. Certainly much larger than anything we have, although a good amount of it, I don't know about a good amount, but some of it at least is mercenaries. But still, if you just talk in terms of territory and the fact that they basically just finished, in my opinion, probably finished their first war against Arcocephaly, since Arcocephaly lost a ton of their sacreds. And it was interesting for this battle, right? I was too focused on matching up just units to units and just lost track of the fact that this is a real army, right? This is really just more an oversized raiding group, that only has one commander. I was so focused on Wind Riders individually can take out, and probably in these numbers, although that is a lot of Spire Horns, but still 43 Wind Riders. I think with sufficient leadership, this could have been a very different battle. But they didn't have sufficient leadership. So anyway, and there's no retreat routes for that. So all those retreaters were destroyed. So I should probably reach out to Kalem to, especially if I do decide to turn south, right, and create more enemies. So for the moment, we're going to continue attacking Agartha. But Agartha definitely does have a point, right, where, we'd already been thinking about the fact that reinforcing for this war is going to be a challenge. And possibly there are some, just as easy gains, maybe even easier gains. No Mind Blasters with these guys. We'd really like to see Pangaea's Bless, hopefully before we have to make that decision. But also probably reaching out to Kalem for a non-aggression pact at this point seems somewhat reasonable. We'll see. We're definitely not to the point where, we can just sort of ignore a ton of bird raiding groups dropping all over our territory. So otherwise, some site searching. We are going to go after this province this turn, so we're just sending, some deer tribe. Now that we have the Bless online, like we should be able to take this with relatively low attrition. We might lose some of our non-sacreds, and we might attrit out like one van here because this is a lot of stuff. We're not sending a ton of units at it, but it's what we have. I don't think we actually even have, not quite full van here recruitment this turn, which is very sad, and that is because we are building a lab here, because we do need to get some mages going. Like, we do not have a lot of mages, and I find that is one of the issues with Vanheim. We're forging a great sword of sharpness, which perhaps a mistake, but I've just had some issues previously in other games. So we're going up against Agartha. Agartha definitely can make some pretty strong early protection thugs. So yeah, I think having like at least one great sword of sharpness hanging around, like we'll use it eventually, and probably sooner rather than later. But between the forging and the fact that your leadership are also like your researchers, right? We have like a lot of mages out here, and you kind of have to do that if you want like the stealth aspect of the elves and the glamour, which you do. But it means that a lot of your mages are out doing stuff kind of all the time instead of researching, which just Vanheim's research not great, and of course we've taken some drains, so that's not going to help matters. So anyway, getting another fort up that can produce more mages, very important. And of course, once we've taken this province, which I'm sure will go swimmingly and there'll be no bumps or anything like that, I do plan on reaching out to Xibalba afterwards and offering a non-aggression pact, and that is just really mostly based on the fact that we've fought like last two games in a row, and like I have other targets that I could fight. So while in some ways I think Xibalba is kind of an ideal target, like especially early on, right? We don't want them to develop a big blood economy or anything like that. Although we don't know what their bless is, so like you never know. Maybe there's some specific bat bless that does really well against Vanhears. I'd have to see it to believe it, but I mean I get proven wrong all the time. But yeah, I just don't want to always attack the same players over and over again. Like, I don't know, that just kind of sucks. So anyway, we're going to take this group and bring them back probably to the capital and combine with whatever's been recruited there, and then take out this throne. And that's probably the point at which like we'll talk to Calum, assuming that we still want to talk to Calum, and then hopefully we'll have a better idea of like what's going on over here. And then, depending on all those factors, we'll take all that stuff along with hopefully some siege chaff from some humans that we've recruited, and possibly some siege strength from some ogres that we've recruited. So I guess the other stuff it's also siege chaff, but it's also mind chaff. So anyway, we'll take all that chaff, all of our sacred recruitment, and then send it somewhere to kill someone. So that is the super rough, super vague plan. The research to support that, we will hit Conjuration 2 just barely this turn, and that'll get us our ogres. And then from there, we're going up for Construction 4 items. So, eventually, this will take us a second, but eventually we will support everything that we talked about with thugs. And then enchantment is going to be useful to us for a couple of reasons. Enchantment 3 specifically, we're looking at Strength of Giants, which probably you usually don't need with Vanhears, and our Vanhears won't need it for a lot of things, but we haven't actually given them any strength, right? So the only strength buff they get is from their Berserk, which is quite high, but I've found that they're still kind of right on that edge where if they run into something that's like a really nasty thug or super combatant, we might run into a situation where it's like, yeah, we kind of need Strength of Giants to do more than just chip damage, which we definitely do want. And then we'll want to go up, I think, to Enchantment 4 for Cloud Trapeze, because we'll have quite a few thugs that can pull that off, and that's going to be very useful. So we want to go up to Enchantment 4 anyway, but yeah, Strength of Giants, we'll see. We might hold at 3 depending on everything that's going on. And I think that more or less covers turn 14.